It's Thursday morning, and it's now time for Treasure Coast native attorney Travis Walker and Legal Off the Cuff from Travis Walker Law in Stewart. The opinions expressed are those of the show's host, not WSTU or Travis Walker Law. Now it's time for Legal Off the Cuff, definitely not your father's legal show, and here's Travis Walker.
Good morning. This is Travis Walker with the law offices of Travis R. Walker. So grateful to be here in Stewart, Florida, talking with all of you about legal off the cuff. We're here to educate and entertain and just provide value to all of you out there with regards to legal issues that are ongoing. You know, talk about some of the news stories that are going on with regards to legal issues, and just overall provide value and education with regards to what's going on in the legal field and questions with regards to the number of practice areas that we handle at the law offices of Travis R. Walker. You can always reach us at 772-708-0952 or traviswalkerlaw.com. We have an intake team who's on, 8:30 to 5:30, ready to take any calls, consultations. If you reference this radio show, you'll get a free consultation, which is a $185 value. And it's definitely something that you should take advantage of, because we run practice areas all the way from personal injury, civil litigation, business, real estate, family law, divorce, adoptions, estate planning, probate. With very few exceptions, the 7 attorneys that we have at our law firm, including a retired judge, are there to help out with the legal issues that they're experts in. You're not getting one attorney who has specializes in everything. You're getting an attorney who specializes in one practice area, and we have an attorney for each one of those practice areas that I ran off, and they're an expert in. So definitely, it's an opportunity for you to reach out to our law firm. We'd love an opportunity to help you out. See if it's something we can help you out, because we provide aggressive, solid, and compassionate representation and advocacy. And we do that because we believe that often people are coming to our office in some of their most difficult times, and we understand and can empathize with people when they're going through a difficult family situation, or they've lost a loved one and need to probate an estate, or they've been involved in an accident and they need an attorney on their side to fight the insurance companies. So we're there for you whenever you're ready. TravisWalkerLaw.com, 772-708-0952. The law offices of Travis R. Walker. Main office is here in Stewart on Federal Highway, and happy to help out as we can. Wanted to open up the today's session with regards to the Camp Lejeune cases. So a lot of people probably may have been hearing recently on the news with regards to the Marine Corps base at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. There's some legislation, and there's some litigation going on with regards to the water that was contaminated at Camp Lejeune. And the unfortunate and terrible thing is that those Marines who volunteer and enlist and are officers with the Marine Corps, who put their lives on the line, who train and leave their families to train, were exposed to some serious, dangerous and carcinogens in the water. That includes PFAS, which is something we're fighting forever in a lot of different water places. But specifically, if there was a Marine who was for 30 or more days between August 1st, 1953 and December 31st, 1987. So at least 30 days at Camp Lejeune from August 1st, 1953 through December 31st, 1987. And they were a member of the military, they were military family members, they were contractors, they were civilians, and anyone else who served, worked, resided, or was otherwise exposed, including in utero exposure, which obviously means during pregnancy, to water at Camp Lejeune and or MCAS New River for 30 or more days from August 1st, 1953 through December 31st, 1987. There's open litigation because of the amount of damage that was done to these Marines and to their loved ones and to those who were there during that time. And it's just awful what's going on at the VA and how they're not getting the services they need. Unfortunately, I've been practicing for 15 years, and I've talked to a number of veterans, and my heart goes out to them, because I know that the VA is a deny until they die type of practice. That they just continue to deny the services and benefits to the veterans. And then eventually they die, and it's terrible. It's unfortunate. It makes me angry. And I think it's a travesty that the people who serve our company, our country, aren't getting the services and benefits they deserve. because the VA continues to not have its stuff together. So, this Camp Lejeune is just another example of that. We've been talking to a number of Marines and people who were involved in that time from August 1st, 1953 through December 31st, 1987. And even people who were exposed after 1987, if they were basically exposed to that, what we call PFAS. And PFAS is basically firefighting foam is primarily what it is. It's a chemical that was used in firefighting foam. And so, we actually, firefighters and fire companies have been involved in litigation as well, because the firefighting foam and the PFAS you can't get it out through water filters. It's a chemical. It binds. It doesn't allow for it to be filtered out. And so here, the law offices of Travis R. Walker, again, traviswalkerlaw.com, 772-708-0952. We're doing cases on a contingency fee basis to try and help these people who've been suffering from these ailments. I mean, the laundry list is so long with regards to the cancers and defects that people are experiencing. And I'll just run through them just so that it's on the record. I mean, bladder cancer, multiple myeloma, esophagus cancer, renal toxicity, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, brain cancer, gallbladder cancer, bile duct cancer, cardiac defects, neurobehavioral effects, kidney cancer, Parkinson's disease, adult leukemia, lung cancer, prostate cancer, Hodgkin's disease, soft tissue cancer, thyroid cancer, spinal cancer, female infertility, liver cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, anemia, pancreatic cancer, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, appendix cancer, intestinal cancer, end-stage renal cancer. Unfortunately, and that's in any other unlisted cancer, because the damage that this PFAS does is just horrible. What it does to the system, and the manufacturers of the firefighting foam, the PFAS at the time, found a great compound that puts out the fires, and especially beneficial with airports and airport firefighters, because the jet fuel fires and those type of fires are obviously so intense that having that firefighting foam is so important. And the stories that come out is unfortunately, nobody of course knew what this stuff was at the time, but once they got done putting out the fires, or in the alternative, if the foam itself expires over a certain period of time, then they would do practice and they would spray the foam across the ground. And unfortunately, that goes right into the groundwater and creates all types of issues with regards to drinking water. And it's just unfortunate. And then the pediatric issues, which obviously just stab you right in the heart, are miscarriage and fetal death, major fetal malformations, child leukemia, birth defects. And unfortunately, the VA, who knows what's going on in the VA that causes all these issues. I mean, it's borderline, evil to have to deal with, some of these situations where our veterans my grandfather was an Army veteran, retired. My maternal grandfather was a Navy veteran, retired. These guys put their lives on the line. These Marines put their lives on the line, and to not get the justice that they deserve, to be thrown off by the VA, to have to deal with these cancers and toxicities, and not have the benefits is unreal. And so if you or a loved one, or someone who was involved from August 1st, 1953 through December 31st, 1987 at Camp Lejeune, they have any of those issues, give us a call. We're taking those cases on a contingency fee basis. We don't get paid unless we recover for you. We're working these cases are across the nation, and they're being compiled to make sure that everybody's getting the compensation they deserve. It's not a class action. We call it an MDL, which is multi-district litigation. So it's quite different from a class action. Your individual damages are taken care of, which from an educational standpoint, there's a big difference between class actions and multi-district litigation. And with the class actions, you're typically dealing with a bank who failed to do an ATM fee or something along those lines, and you get your $3.50 check, and that's a class action. With an MDL, with multi-district litigation, and we're talking about things like Xarelto or Fen-Phen or a lot of these big drug companies, your individual damages are different. I mean, I just listed a laundry list of cancers of where people who have Parkinson's disease have a much different damage than someone who has ovarian cancer versus someone who has colorectal cancer. So, your damages are individualized and the compensation is individualized for each person. And we have experts that do that. So, give us a call, TravisWalkerLaw.com, 772-708-0952. I just had to open up the episode today regarding that issue because it hurts me. It hurts me to know that you got these Marines, you got these Marine families and the people who served, and they're just not getting they're getting their voice heard. They're damaged, this water damaged them. And if all the things that you should be able to trust in this life is the water you drink, the water you bathe in, and it just wasn't happening here. So wanted to catch up with that. I don't know, Evan, have you ever had an experience with the VA, or anybody who's had experience with the VA trying
My
to work
daughter goes there all the time for her treatment and medical things because she's a veteran in the Army. She served for about 9 years, so she goes to the VA all the time.
Yeah,
she's had nothing but good results
That's
from
good.
them. They take good care of her there.
Yeah, no, thank you for her service.
Yeah,
and everything else she does there, and that's fantastic. So yeah, trying to obviously constantly make sure that people are getting the benefits they deserve is a big part of what we do, and certainly everything that's going on there. So yeah, so happy to. And if you want to call in to the show, 220-WSTU, again, that's 220-9788. Love to chat with you about any different legal issues. Again, our office, not only obviously handles product liability and personal injury, car accident cases, which we have an attorney who specializes in, but we also do probate and estate planning, the family law, the real estate, the business law, contracts, and the whole gamut there, along with real estate. So happy to chat with anybody who wants to call in and talk about that, and go from there. Certainly an important part, that we're seeing a number of divorce filings increase. I don't know if it's a part of the post-COVID world, or if it's part of just the whole process of people working through things and everything. But the other thing is that we're seeing, at least here on the Treasure Coast, is that we've had such an amount of growth that there's more people filing. And then there's also the judges are getting a little overwhelmed. And, I give a lot of credit to our judges. They do a great job. They're dealing with dockets that are increasing. And of course, people can move here in a month's worth of time, but it takes the legislature months, if not years, to catch up to funding the judiciary to handle the people that are coming here. So, that's an ongoing issue. That's why it's, if you're thinking about things, unfortunately, sometimes it's taking longer through the court system to get to a finality if you end up going through the entire process, because the dockets are increasing and everything. So we got, Evan, I don't know if people who've been in the court system a long period of time, or if you had a certain level of frustration with that, how long that took. And I don't know if you have any experience with that or know somebody who did.
Actually, a friend of mine I talked to the other day had something. They gave me some unfortunate news. They were actually set to get married in a couple of months.
Oh, wow.
And they have a biological child together, and she has another child from a prior marriage.
Yeah.
And he just up and left.
Who?
Yeah.
Who did? The
dad.
The first dad, or the second dad, or
the person she's supposed to get married with, who she has a biological child with.
Really?
And she's stuck.
Oh my gosh.
She just she called me up crying on the phone. What do I do? And what am I gonna do? And I'm not an attorney. I don't know anything. I don't know how to advise you.
That's insane.
And I know, from my experience of things that have happened to me in the past, I says, got to get yourself an attorney. You got to make sure you're financially taken care of. He's obviously going to have to pay you child support if he's not with you anymore.
Right.
Just a basic common knowledge things, I guess.
Yeah. No. And then that's huge. I mean, that's so unfortunate that she's having to deal with that. Cause one, you have the expectation of, I'm going to go and get married to somebody. I'm going to spend my life with them. One, they get up and leave and just leave you. Two, you're stuck with, the kid and all the issues and uncertainty that comes with that.
Yeah.
It's actually funny because we were just dealing with this with another divorce that we're doing. So it's the same exact scenario. The mom and dad were together and had a child. Then they got married, and then they filed. One of them filed for divorce. So if typically people, often, I mean, they'll get married and they'll have a child, and then legally, if you have a child with somebody, and you're married to them, then that they're presumed to be their child of the marriage, like
Yeah.
each one of their mom and dad.
Assuming.
Assuming.
That's why they have this wonderful test that's called paternity.
Exactly. But you know what? The crazy thing is that, mom and dad are married, and then and mom gets pregnant, whether they're separated or not, and then dad, the husband is not the actual father.
Yeah.
Legally, he's still the father until he's proved otherwise. So there's plenty of husbands who got married. Mom gets pregnant by somebody else.
Right.
Husband is on the hook for the child support until proven otherwise.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like this is an episode of Maury Povich where you are not the father.
You are not the father.
Wow.
So like,
okay.
If you can only imagine being put in that situation, which of course, like, I mean, especially if you've been separated, and that's the crazy thing is that, like, if you're separated 5 or 10 years, you never just got the divorce done because you didn't want to have to deal with the financial part of it, didn't want to deal with the stress and everything else. You're just like, F it, I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
That they're still legally considered the father.
Okay.
Even though they're separated, because that's the law. You're married, there's a child born during the marriage. Whether or not the child was fathered by somebody outside the marriage is still legally considered that. So a husband's still on the hook until he proves otherwise.
Okay.
And it's a hairy situation sometimes.
So how is, diving into the whole child support thing? How is that determined? Is there a chart that is, because I mean, from when I went through all that eons ago, but nowadays it's so different compared to when I went through all of that stuff. How is the whole child support thing determined? How much, spouse number one has to pay to spouse number two? And I'm not going to say the husband has to pay to the wife, because nowadays it's equal.
It is.
It's the other way around, where the ex-wife has to pay the ex-husband.
I see it.
Child support.
Yep.
I'm sure you see it all the time.
I do.
How is that determined in a court of law? Is there a chart that has gone by? How is that done these days?
It's a great question. And if someone else has a question out there, please give us a call, 220-WSTU, 220-9788. If you have some general child support questions, I'm happy to try and field them as best as I can. Or give us a call at the law offices of Travis R. Walker, traviswalkerlaw.com, 772-708-0952. The question is, so child support is primarily, like, I'd say 80-90% basically calculated based on the number of overnights with each parent, and then the number and then the income of each parent.
Okay.
So, like, if you have 365 days a year, and it's 182 and a half days per year, if you do it 50-50, and each one of them makes $50,000 a year, let's just say, you're pretty much going to be, not going to have, any child support going either way, because the overnights and the income are really going to determine.
So in other words, if after the divorce is done and they decide to do what's called shared parental responsibility,
yes,
and not primary residential custody,
right?
Because there's many different ways that it can go, I assume, right?
Correct.
Like one person is the primary custodial parent and then the second is not.
Yes.
So if one parent has the child half the year, the other parent has the child the other half of the year, there's no child support to be exchanged.
Almost exclusively. I mean, with the caveat that if you have daycare or healthcare expenses or health insurance or those types of things that are being paid by one parent versus the other, there'll be some credits and offsets in that department.
Okay.
But almost, I mean, if you have the same income and you have the same exact 50-50, overnights in a year, then you're going to basically have no child support.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is interesting. And what you kind of hit on, the parental responsibility, that's a little bit different. I mean, the child support, is basically determined by time sharing.
Okay.
Parental responsibility is part of the parenting plan. That's either you're agreed to or is determined by the court. And the parenting plan, you can either have shared parental responsibility or sole parental responsibility, or like a hybrid of both. And so, like, if you have like a parent who's like been on drugs and has issues or has been abandoning the child and everything else like that, obviously the court's going to give the other parent, the one who's been custodial, sole parental responsibility,
right?
Which means that they get to make all the decisions.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's shared parental responsibility. If you have two mature, responsible parents who are actively involved, you're going to have shared parental responsibility. They're supposed to negotiate and work back and forth, like, Do we put the child in this school? Does it go in this extracurricular activity? Does it go to this doctor? Does it go to this dentist? All those types of things are typically shared parental responsibility.
Okay.
So that's the decision-making authority that happens.
Okay.
But that all goes to what is in the best interest of the child, and that's what the standard by which the courts work with. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing nowadays when you look back 25, 30 years ago, how it was, and it was way different.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that would never have been heard of back in the day.
No. It's crazy, and the law really has changed a lot.
Mhm.
And I've been doing this for 15 years, and even during this time, because during the last 15 years, we've seen the alimony bill come to the state legislature in Tallahassee, and it got knocked down again. But the intent of that bill was to remove permanent alimony from existence.
And that was another thing I was going to ask you about, is what constitutes, and this is a learning curve for me.
Yeah, no worries.
What constitutes a man or a woman? And again, I'm very careful how I say this, because it goes either way nowadays. It's not like back in the day where the woman was always the one getting the alimony. Now it's a 50-50 thing. So what constitutes, Jane Doe or John Smith from getting alimony?
Sure.
How does that work?
So, I mean, so in Florida, it's a need versus ability to pay.
Okay.
So like there's a laundry list of statutory factors that go into the judge's determination as to whether alimony goes into it. But the overall umbrella is the need versus ability to pay. So, and then the other part of it is, do you have a short-term marriage? Do you have a medium-term marriage? Or do you have a long-term marriage? And the more it goes to a long-term marriage, the more there is a presumption of alimony and permanent alimony. And so that comes into play with regards to it. And so it's a need versus ability to pay. So if you have two people who are on unemployment that have been married 30 years and they're going through a divorce, yeah, you have a long-term marriage, but you have two people on unemployment. So the ability to pay, while there may be a need, of course, because they're both on unemployment, the ability to pay for one or the other is just not there. So, they're barely able to provide the food stamps and everything else that they have. So there's just no way to squeeze blood from a rock.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you have someone who was a breadwinner for a long period of time and they have a long-term 30-year marriage, the other person stayed at home, whether it was mom or dad. And alimony goes both ways. There's not really a presumption, either way with regards to gender. If there is that ability to show a need versus ability to pay, then that comes into context, and then the court can award alimony based upon that.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's crazy. So yeah, and it really has mutated a lot, and because because things have shifted so much over the years. I mean, if you can only imagine the cultural context of alimony back in the 50s versus the cultural context in the 2020s, as to the context and how people are going to approach alimony is completely different. And so I think the judiciary in turn has really changed as well, because over time the judges who were there in the 50s obviously are no longer the judges that are here in the 2020s. And typically we have judges are typically starting in their 40s or 50s, and then they serve 20 or 30 years. We have the great fortune of having a former judge at our office, Shields McManus, and he does a great job for us. But the alimony has really changed. And if you do have somebody who's going through divorce, if you have any questions about alimony, child support, please don't hesitate to give us a call. 772-708-0952, TravisWalkerLaw.com. Happy to chat with you about any alimony or parental responsibility or time sharing issues you may have, because it really is. It's there's people filing for divorce every day on the Treasure Coast, and they're dealing with these issues.
Yeah, you brought up something else that I've heard a lot of people talking about, that they get stuck in these timeshare things.
Yes.
And that's another very sticky subject.
Yep.
Where people get trapped into buying timeshare and then they just want out.
Right. Yeah.
And your firm can help them with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's, and we all heard the stories about, hey, we're going to go get SeaWorld tickets if we go buy a timeshare or something. Right.
Yeah.
And, if we, these people, you get sucked into a timeshare, there are options of trying to get out of those. Obviously, the timeshare industry is really, really smart about the way that they word things. And then, if a bad decision against them comes out, then they pivot and change their contracts. And candidly, the real estate builders out there are great about that too. They're very, very quick on the fly. If you look at the difference between going into the real estate talk, if you look at the difference between a real estate contract for an existing home, we call it a Florida Association Realtor a Florida bar contract or a FAR bar contract that realtors use. And is basic standard for title insurance versus what the builders use. Huge difference in like how, I don't want to say draconian, but how one-sided or builder favored the contracts are for the builder. With the FAR bar contract, the intent is to make it as even as possible, as straight down the road as possible. There's contingencies for the buyer with regards to financing. The seller has their remedies. There's actually supposed to be mediation if you have a dispute with regards to your real estate. You go through that whole process. So whether it's the timeshare, going back to what you're talking about, timeshares, or whether it's the builders, their contracts are really, really strong for the timeshare industry or for the builders. So you have to be very careful what you're entering into, because you can really get locked in quick. I think I'm seeing issues with builders with regards to, someone puts down, I don't know, $30,000-$50,000 deposit, and then they put $30,000 or $50,000 worth of upgrades into the house, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then the whole they can't move into the house, and then the builder's like, so sorry, you lose your deposit, you lose your upgrades, you're out $100,000 because something came up. With a regular existing house, you have those contingencies, and it's a lot easier to get out of. So, it's smart for someone to go have their contract reviewed, whether an attorney by us or another attorney, happy to do so. 772-708-0952, TravisWalkerLaw.com. Love to take a look at what you got going on so that we can make sure that you're protected as much as possible. But yeah, getting into those timeshares are a pain.
Is it very difficult to get out of a timeshare? Because my vision of a timeshare is just nothing more than buying 1 week or 2 weeks of a condo that somebody owns, and they rent weeks out to people.
Right.
That's my terminology of it.
Right.
Am I close?
No, I mean, you're right. And it's not, and it's something that they have complete control over. And the biggest thing is, like, people will buy into timeshares. I've seen timeshares from like 20 or 30 years ago, and they're just frustrated because at some point they stopped using the timeshare or whatever. Or with the real leverage the timeshare industry has is the assessments, the annual assessments that come up, and driving those up through the roof, because you get locked into the price of the timeshare a long time ago, but then they have these assessments and these common benefit fees and everything else like that they just continue to increase, or we call them CAMs, consumer.
Is it like an HOA fee when you move into a development and you have to pay that HOA?
Exactly.
I was in that once, and boy, am I glad that where I live now, we're near where you live.
Yes.
Thank the Lord there's no HOA, because I could do whatever I want to my house.
Yes.
I can put as many decorations up.
Yes.
I don't have the condo commando telling me, your vehicle has a bumper sticker on it and you have to take it off, or this or that, or
no, it's amazing. And I've been doing this for 15 years and 14 years here on the Treasure Coast. And as we all know, here on the Treasure Coast, there's a lot of associations. There's both homeowners associations and condo associations and mobile home parks. And the condo associations especially have a lot of control, because that's just what the statutes provide. They're a creature of statute. The homeowners associations, they too have a lot of, and so like a lot of people buy into a gated community or a development, and they really don't know like what kind of culture they're jumping into. And you and I live in Greater Port St. Lucie, and it's great because we can do basically whatever we want to, as long as it's within
code enforcement.
We're good.
That's right.
We're good there. But the color of your mailbox, whether you can have a flagpole outside. That was a big case back in Jupiter many years ago. Guy wanted to fly an American flag, in his front yard, and the association said no, and it just went to litigation. And actually, the way that statutes are provided is that if you do have to fight your association, and you win, you can get your attorney's fees back. And we do that. We fight associations all the time because they get a little overzealous, and I give credit to association boards because they are volunteer organizations. These people are volunteering their time, but there are association boards where the people, there's like a chorus and they just like an echo chamber of sorts, where they just like, they think they have the power to do things that they don't. And, unfortunately, the governing documents, whether it's in homeowners associations, it's the covenants and restrictions, it's the articles of incorporation, it's the bylaws, those types of things can really be construed against the association because it's their association.
Right.
If you say like this person shouldn't have a shed, or this person, shouldn't have this color truck or bumper sticker or something like that, and your rules don't really say that, and then you try and enforce that, you're going to be in a bad spot, and then you can get attorney's fees back. I think, if my recollection is correct, that American flag case back in Jupiter got a lot of publicity because, of course,
I remember that.
yeah, you should, God, yeah, you should be able to
you should be able to fly your flag,
Yeah,
whether
heck yeah.
you're in an association or not.
That should be like a free speech thing.
Yes.
And it's frustrating. And I think the guy who, I don't know how he bankrolled it or whatever, but it ended up being like $200,000 worth of attorney's fees.
Wow.
Against the association. And of course, that the thought
Did
process,
he win the case?
He won the case.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
the challenge then, of course, is just like with a roof or something like that. If you have to do an assessment across the community,
Yeah.
the association board now has to say, okay, well, this association, we got pinched for $200,000.
Mhm.
Now we're going to have to create an assessment across the entire community because we were stupid enough to litigate this. Yeah.
So somebody has to pay the $200,000.
Yes.
See, that's I've always heard that it's one thing when you go to court and you get awarded a specific amount of money,
Correct,
regardless of what the case is.
Yes.
Then it's another issue collecting the money.
It is.
That's a whole nother. You can go to court and the judge could say, okay, John Doe, we rule in the plaintiff's favor, judgment for the plaintiff, $100,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're all happy and you think you've got your $100,000, but collecting that $100,000 is a whole nother issue.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a 100% issue. And it's so I think back to, like 50 Cent, the rapper, he had a judgment against him for a defamation case, and Amber Heard. And I just saw an article on the Johnny Depp case. She's like looking to file for bankruptcy. So Johnny Depp got a $10 or $20 million judgment against her for defamation. She's appealing it, but if she files for bankruptcy, his ability to collect is going to be a lot less.
Right.
And it's the same way with, and even when people don't file for bankruptcy. So say, for instance, you got a $10,000 judgment against somebody. And then you want to go collect on it, whether you want to do it through garnishment or you want to attach their assets or levy this or that or the other. There are certain exemptions and you have to kind of chase after them. And so sometimes when we're looking at litigation and we're looking at, so-and-so down the road, we have to determine, is that person what we call judgment proof? Like, you can get a judgment against them, but it's just worth the piece of paper that it's written on. Right. And so we have to advise our clients. It's like, look, I know you hate this guy. I know he's made you angry as anything, but you definitely play into consideration the dollars amount, because if you go get a judgment against him for 20, 30 grand or something like that, your ability to collect on this guy is like 2 or 3%, and you're kind of waiting for this guy to hit the lotto or something like that, which is it's just unfortunate. But
so what happens in that case
as far as
the actual the end result?
Yeah.
How do you get your money, or do you just pretty much never get your money if the chances are slim to none?
It's a frustrating situation because basically you may never recover that money.
So it's just something that's in the court system. That's a piece of paper that says judgment against.
Right.
And that's that.
Well, so what you do is there's a process by which you go through the state, and also where you get certified copies of the judgment, you record them in the public records. And so if that person were to try and go buy a house or try and, do this, that, and the other, or, it's going to affect their credit and all that type of stuff. But in the end, if you got some guy he's 40 years old, he lives with mom, he smokes pot, he's not planning on doing anything with his life. And, he got behind the wheel of a car and hit somebody, he doesn't have insurance, they did a bunch of damage. You go get a big judgment against them, but, and record it out there, and you're just waiting for the guy to hit the lotto or something. Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but that's just it.
Can somebody, take out a lien against somebody's property?
Yeah. So so when you record that judgment, it basically affects a lien, because because in order to clear title for the next person to buy that property, you do have to satisfy it. But then you get into the question of homestead rights here in Florida, and homestead is a very strong constitutional right. It's actually in the Florida Constitution, the same thing that gives you that homestead exemption and everything. That's a huge constitutional right. So your ability to actually lien and collect on somebody's homestead property is very difficult unless that lien has to do with the property itself. So if you took out a mortgage, of course the mortgage company can foreclose on the property if you stop making payments.
Right.
But if you owe Joe Dirt for, a car, and he tries to lien your property, he's not going to be able to foreclose on your house if it's your homestead.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of it as well. But we do collect judgments at the law offices of Travis R. Walker, both defending and collecting. We got an attorney who does that. And give us a call, 772-708-0952. Visit us at traviswalkerlaw.com. Love to chat with you about it. It is something that we actively do, because there's so many nuances between bankruptcy and collectability. We've got skip tracing software. We've got different softwares that really kind of allow us to dig into the collectability of some of these people.
Mhm.
So if you have a judgment, hopefully it's not more than just a piece of paper. Hopefully it's something you can collect on, and you can levy assets, which means like you go and find a vehicle or something and force the sale of it, or you garnish their bank accounts or that type of thing. There is a process to do that.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I'll have to remember that should I ever need that.
Hopefully you never do.
No, hopefully I never do.
It's like,
it's interesting stuff.
Yeah,
it really is.
And as a lawyer, there's people coming to my office all the time, and sometimes I'm like, I'm so sorry you're having to deal with this, because I really am. I mean, like, they're just dealing with some of the worst situations, and sometimes I feel like a funeral director. It's like, who wants to be dealing with a funeral director? Nobody. But like, when you need them and you have to deal with a situation, they're there to help you out and guide you through it and get you through it in the most empathetic way as possible. And that's what we try to do. We provide aggressive, solid, and compassionate representation and advocacy for that same reason. So
now, you brought up another thought, because there's things that you say in your conversation that I pay attention to. You brought up about funeral director, and the first thing that comes to mind is somebody passes away.
Yes.
Okay. They own a home. They own property. And they have 2 kids.
Right.
And the kids are going tooth and nail as far as, well, I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. How is that all devised in the court of law through an attorney?
Sure.
How does that work?
And it depends. And that's why, people who do estate planning are of course, if you're doing estate planning, you're passed away. You don't care what happens in a certain extent.
Right.
But really what you're doing is you're respecting those people coming behind you and making sure they're taken care of. So, if you have a house or if you have assets, one of the things that we do is set up trusts. And so, there's really 3 categories that it comes down to. So your first category is what a lot of people have, which is no will, no estate planning. And so in those instances, we call them intestate. And in those cases, the Florida statutes provide what happens to their assets. The second step are people who have wills. And so you have a will, and it says how your assets are going, what's going to happen to the house, what's going to happen to the car, what's going to happen to your stuff. That has to be probated. So if you have a will, it has to be probated. When it's probated, it has to go through the courts.
What does probate mean for our listeners that don't know what probate is?
Right. Yeah. So probate is basically when you have to open something. You have basically file a lawsuit in the court. It's a probate petition for administration of someone's estate. It's a lawsuit, and basically you're coming forward on behalf of the deceased, the dead person, to take care of their assets.
Okay.
Up north, they call it the executor of the estate.
Okay.
Here, we call it a personal representative.
Okay.
That person has the authority to work through the assets and debts to basically work out that. So like, recently I talked to somebody who's got a lot, that was owned by their father. Their mother is still alive, but dad only had it in his name. It was obviously not homesteaded. It wasn't deeded in a way where it went automatically to mom. So it's just in dad's name, and it needs to be probated into mom so that mom can sell it.
Okay.
Right. Otherwise, it just sits there forever.
Okay.
Because like, even if it goes to a tax deed sale, I'm really getting the weeds here. If you fail to pay the taxes on that piece of property and it goes to sale, and then there's money left over from that sale, you're still not going to be able to get that money because John Doe, the guy who died, is no longer around.
Right.
And it hasn't been probated. So basically, for the listeners, a probate is a lawsuit that's open in the courts. There's a filing fee of like $500. Typically, if you have an attorney do it, there's a retainer involved. But basically, they go through the process and file all the paperwork, the affidavits. There's a creditor period where the creditors have to, have an opportunity to make a claim against the estate. And then you go through that process to basically allow that executor / personal representative to have the authority to like deed the property into somebody else's name, that type of thing, so that you can actually move all the assets over, because they didn't do that at that point. The third option is to do a trust, which actually removes the whole idea of probate. because the trust like is an automatic thing, and then as soon as that person passes, the trust allows for the assets to move over.
Okay.
It's kind of like, I mean, if people have had the unfortunate have to deal with their parents passing away, you think about it like a payable upon death, or like a life insurance policy
Right.
beneficiary. That person passes away, automatically that money is paid out
Okay.
without having to go through the court system.
Okay. Now I know that there's all these different types of, you have a will, and then you have what's called a living. There's a difference between a living will and a regular will. Am I correct?
You're very correct.
What are the differences between the two?
So a will is basically like your assets and liabilities, how you want your funeral to be done, how you want, what you want to happen to the house, what you want to happen to the car, what you want to happen to your, stocks that aren't payable upon death or accounts that aren't payable upon death. That's in a will. And a living will is basically your, what we call the do not resuscitate document. So like, if you go into a vegetative state, do you want to be resuscitated? I think it's Terry Schiavo case. I think it was like 20 years ago or something.
Okay.
Jeb Bush was the governor, because I remember like he was actually there's a picture of him in the hospital room with Terry Schiavo. Terry Schiavo didn't have a living will, so there was no direction as to what was supposed to happen to her when she passed.
Okay.
I think her mother and father wanted to keep her alive. Her husband wanted to pull the plug. And so there was a big court case and a debate and everything, both in the public and then in the courts, with regards to how to handle that. And that living will basically says, if I'm in these certain types of states, this is my advance directive to what you're supposed to do to me. And it's like, and so that the living will basically deals with the body, your body and what you do, versus the will itself is really about, what you have, the possessions you have, and then the debts you have.
So a living will is basically a DNR, is what it is.
Correct.
That's all it is.
Yes.
A DNR.
Correct.
I was under the assumption that a DNR is a DNR. It's a piece of paper you sign at the hospital if you go in.
Yep.
Or somebody signs that's your power of attorney. And then you have a will and a living will. I had no idea. That's, again, you're educating me.
This is what I'm here for, to provide value and everything to everyone.
I'm getting free legal advice on the air for myself, and then again, we're educating the listeners too.
Absolutely. So and they're all questions that I get regularly. So this
is really good information.
I appreciate that. And so I mean, you have what we often do is what we call an estate planning package.
Okay.
And there's multiple parts of that, and the will and the living will are a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
The other parts are what we call a designation of healthcare surrogate, which is basically medical power of attorney. So like, someone can make decisions on your behalf.
That I know what that is.
In the hospital.
I do know what that is.
Got it. And then you have a regular durable power of attorney, which means you can handle like the finances and the house and that type of thing.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing about powers of attorney is that they go into effect immediately, which is great, because then anybody can do what they need to on your behalf.
Right.
The challenge is that, especially in Florida, a lot of elder law abuse, a lot of like people who take advantage of people. They get a power of attorney from someone who's elderly and then basically like run off with their money.
So there's a difference between a power of attorney and a durable power of attorney.
Correct.
What are the two differences?
The durable power of attorney really is intended to once people have gone into certain situations and everything, and each one of the power of attorneys, at least what we work with, have the ability to initial the different things where people are having, I would want somebody to have this power, I would want somebody to not have that power.
Okay.
And a durable power of attorney is more of a broad power of attorney with those specific ones determined. A power of attorney is, like, say for instance, you're like, I'm selling my house, I'm going to be in Africa, I'm going to give you a power of attorney so you can sign on my behalf. And so like, that's kind of like what we call limited power of attorney.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit more narrowly.
So
scoped.
you have to be very specific in that document what you want that person to be able to do on your behalf.
Correct.
Yes.
So if you have any questions about a power of attorney or power of attorney abuse, or you have a will contest or trusts or anything else like that, because not only do we draft the wills and trusts, but we also help people who like believe there was like someone was on their deathbed and they were like coerced into signing a will that they shouldn't have, or something along those lines. Or you are the executor or personal representative and you're having problems with the heirs because they're alleging you're doing all kinds of bad stuff. We handle those types of cases. Give us a call, 772-708-0952. Visit us at traviswalkerlaw.com. Happy to talk with you, help you out. Free consult if you mention the radio show. But yeah, I mean, if you're working through those types of things,
Mhm.
and definitely make sure that you're doing what you need to do to cover yourself, because you have the power of attorney. Those and the other thing is like, if you have a valid power of attorney, they're really required to, anyone you give that to is required to rely upon that power of attorney. You should be able to go where you need to use that power of attorney, so that you're not dealing with situations, because people will come with all different things. But that's why you have to have those specific rights in the power of attorney determined and authorized, because then if someone doesn't come around and do it, if it's not properly worded, then you have a whole different issue. Finally, you have like what we call a designation of pre-need guardianship. Basically, if someone is like has dementia or Alzheimer's, or needs to be in a guardianship or something, there's a designation of pre-need guardianship that can be done, so that that person, if they do need a guardianship, they've already designated who they want their guardian. Because we do handle guardianships at our office as part of our probate and estate planning practice. Basically, people, and I've dealt with, unfortunately, people in their 80s and 90s who have dementia and Alzheimer's, who need to have care from a guardian. I've also dealt with people in their 20s and 30s who have schizophrenia, who need a guardian. So those guardianships are important part of the process, because you can, and this is the difference between a power of attorney, which I know we were talking about.
Mhm.
The power of attorney gives you the right to act on that person's behalf,
Okay.
but you can't control that person. You can say, okay, I'm going to put mom into a home with a power of attorney. Okay, you can sign the documents to get her in there. You can pay for things out of her bank account and all that type of stuff. But if mom wants to get up and leave and wants to go down the road and whatever, you're not going to be able to control her and keep her there. With a guardianship, you're actually able to keep, you're actually like your parent, you're an adult
Oh,
parent.
wow. Okay.
And so you're able to actually like say, I'm putting mom in a home. Mom, you have to stay in the home, home, you can't let mom out. I have a guardianship over her, and that the court has given me the authority. And the way that the guardianship orders say, I mean, all the way down to like the right to marry, the right to vote, those types of things are now determined by the guardian, as opposed to the person who has the guardianship over them. We call them the ward.
Very interesting.
So yeah, so a lot of people will come and they'll say, I'm getting a power of attorney, everything's gonna be fine, boom, boom, boom. But if you have like, especially like a schizophrenic person or something like that, a power of attorney is not going to handle it, because the power of attorney is just going to give you the ability to act on their behalf. It's not going to give you any control over that person.
That's what the guardianship does.
Exactly.
The guardianship gives you control of what they physically are capable of doing.
Correct. Yep. And then like, I mean, you talk about the Britney Spears case and stuff. I mean, I haven't been following it too much because it's California law, so it's completely different.
Mhm.
But that being said, like the ability to control, like the whole thing in Britney was like free Britney, all this type of stuff, or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
It's because like her dad had her like under control in a house or something like that. And it's the same thing here. Is like you have a guardianship over somebody, whether they have dementia or Alzheimer's or other medical issues, schizophrenia. It's often deals with mental issues, because they really can't control themselves. You're dealing basically with an adult child. And especially with Alzheimer's, dementia, it's such a sad process. And these people are, unfortunately, they're great people and loving people, and then all of a sudden dementia causes them to be angry and vengeful and sometimes overly sexual and all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
So it's really controlling them, and that's obviously how people are kept in psychiatric wards and stuff as well.
I know we have an older listening audience too, that listen to this station and listen to my show in the morning and are listening today. So this is really, I feel this is really good topics that we're talking about for the listening audience.
Yeah.
Educating them on the different types of things.
And I think we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive, next time, especially, the powers of attorney, the probates, the guardianships, the pre-need guardianships, the elder law abuse. I mean,
that's something that's really big right now is the elder law that's going on, the elder abuse, where people, and even people's children,
yes,
will get the parent to sign over power of attorney.
Yep.
And now the child controls everything.
Correct.
Literally everything.
Correct. And I mean, when they literally control everything, like you said, like mom, dad could have $200,000, $500,000, $1 million more. Doesn't matter. You give that person power of attorney, they could go clean out those bank accounts.
I was going to say they could walk into XYZ bank with the power of attorney form.
Yep.
They're not on the bank account.
Correct.
And they can say, I need to close this account. And the bank cannot do anything.
And actually, the bank will get in trouble if they do stop them, because if you have a valid power of attorney and you have authority to do it, and then you deny the ability to exercise that power of
Right.
attorney, there's a consequence to the bank to do that. So the bank's kind of got their hands tied and everything.
Wow.
And it's just terrible that people are taking advantage of it. But yeah, I've seen that over and over again. And or they get a power of attorney and then they deed the house to themselves, and then then moms they get rid of mom.
Yeah.
It's a whole process, and whether they intentionally from the beginning plan to be evil about the whole thing, or if it's like a slow downward process where they have a slippery slope and then all of a sudden they're stealing money and everything, it doesn't matter. They're committing fraud felonies, and they got to be protected against.
I've seen I've read in the newspaper also where the home health care aides that look after the CNAs, I guess that's what they're called, the certified nurses assistants.
Yeah.
These are people that have cared for the elderly for years, and they've literally cared for one patient for years. They get that patient's trust.
Yes.
And I've read to where that patient will sign a power of attorney over to that CNA.
Yes.
And now the CNA all of a sudden controls all the assets.
Yes. Yes.
And that's not a pretty picture.
That's not a pretty picture. And then the children are like, what the heck happened? Mom had a bunch of retirement accounts. She was supposed to be set. She, we had everything paid for and everything. She had this house that she was going to live in that had no mortgage on it. And then now, we're all set and done with. And, if you have people who, if you're dealing with a situation like this, happy to chat with you. TravisWalkerLaw.com, the law office of Travis R. Walker, 772-708-0952. We handle these types of cases often and regularly, and it's unfortunate and sad that it gets to that point, but it is what it is.
Can a power of attorney be reversed?
Yep,
it can be.
It absolutely can be, and it should be in certain circumstances.
Okay.
But you have to do the right way. It basically has to be done the same way that the power of attorney was done, and you have to revoke it the right way. I mean, you can revoke it in other ways, and then it becomes a kind of a gray area. Was the power of attorney revoked or not? But certainly, once a power of attorney is put into place, it can be revoked. Yes.
Okay, that's something also good to know, because if there's a little bit of dirty pool going on, so to speak, then that power of attorney can be revoked.
And as everyone knows, or we all are familiar with, like, people who are being taken care of by other people, the person who's the patient actually sometimes outlives the person who's taking care of them, because it's such a burden, it's such a stress to take care of somebody.
Right.
So if that person gets into a position where they can't exercise the power of attorney anymore, or there's a question is like maybe they too are like having mental issues and everything, by all means revoke that power of attorney, because the consequences can be great.
Is there an expiration date on a power of attorney?
I believe,
or is it eternity?
I believe there can be. So, and I know we only got a couple minutes left.
That's
but real quick, so they used to have what we call a springing power of attorney.
Okay.
And the springing power of attorney used to be, this power of attorney is going to go into effect when that person is incapacitated. They got away with that law a few years ago, and so now it immediately goes into effect, or it's immediately revoked.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I thought a power of attorney, once you sign the power of attorney, giving that person authority to do whatever needs to be done, it's there, and that's it.
Yeah.
Doesn't expire.
No, it doesn't expire.
Wow. All right. Get your information out more. This is great stuff.
Well, thank you so much. This is Travis Walker, the law office of Travis R. Walker. We're here in Stuart. We serve the entire Treasure Coast and actually have a satellite office in West Palm, serving the Palm Beaches as well. You can visit us at www.traviswalkerlaw.com. You can email me at traviswalker@traviswalkerlaw.com, or call us at 772-708-0952. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you. Love entertaining and educating you, providing aggressive and solid advocacy and representation on the Treasure Coast. Thank you.